managing attachments and personal relationships. And last time, if you recall, we talked a little bit about the nature of attachment. We talked about some of the objects of our attachments and things of that nature. So today we're going to really begin in a very, very formal way to step by step and systematically go through that whole process. I believe, assigned some homework last time in anticipation of this workshop. We'll come back to that a little later. Attachment, as you know, is one of the 5 emotional afflictions that compounds and interferes with our ability to make maximum spiritual progress. And it's interesting that attachment very often is one of the most difficult perverted states of mind. By perverted, I mean a negative state of mind that interferes with spiritual growth. Attachment is one of the most difficult ones to feel. It is very, very subtle, and very often it masquerades as something so legitimate that you would never suspect it. After all, we're attached to our wives, we're attached to our children, we're attached to our friends and relatives. And little would we suspect that very often it is these attachments that is the greatest barrier in making any kind of spiritual progress. And spiritual progress, remember, requires change, don't it? It requires us to go through a certain transformation. And very often, the spiritual transformation and the changes that we have to make in order to bring our lives in alignments with the teachings are made difficult, if not impossible, because of our attachments. Kabir Sahib, one of the medieval saints out of India, illustrates this point very powerfully and very beautifully, and a lot of the writings that he has left to us. And Kabir points out very often that when we come first into contact with spiritual teachings, and our intellects really understand those teachings, then it creates in us a desire, obviously, to follow the path. But very often what happens is that we do not go very far on the path, because we soon discover that to follow the teachings means you have to alter your relationships. And Kabir tells a story of one seeker who came, heard the teachings as a young man, and decided that he would travel the spiritual path. But he decided that he would travel the path after he finished raising his children. Because at the time that he heard teachings, he was a young man, and his family was young. And he was very sincere, because he said, there's no problem, but this Kabir has taught is absolutely correct. We all feel that way. What these great masters and seers have left us in the form of their scriptures and holy books, and the Bibles and the Qurans and the Vedas and the Uddada and all of these great Shastras and Sutras, when we read these things, we can't help but marvel at the profound truth that they speak, and we embrace those truths. And this young man was no different than us, and he embraced the teachings that Kabir had shared with him. But his children were small, and first he would have to raise his family. After all, he has responsibility to his children. So some 20 years went by. And the thought came to him again that, now, it is time to follow the teachings, to follow the path, to move toward my reconciliation with my Creator, to come in contact with the divine, and etc. And he thought again that, wait, these children are grown, but now I have grandchildren, and these kids of mine don't know what they're doing, you see? So I need to make sure that there's a smooth transition. I got to hang around a little while, right? Until I make sure that my sons and daughters know what they're doing. And get established, and then they can relieve me from my responsibility as the head of the family and so on. Well, I don't have to paint the whole picture, needless to say. The man never did follow the man. And the thing that blocked him was attachment to his family and his friends. So, like him, most of us are attached. If you look at and feel in yourself and ask yourself, when is the last time you really grew? Really? Honestly, when is the last time you really had an authentic experience of personal growth? But most of us is located way back somewhere in the distant past. We have not gone to new levels because we are still clinging to the levels that we were on. So attachment means fundamentally to cling. It is a clinging experience. And very often it is clinging to people. You see. It need not be limited to clinging to people. We're going to talk about that too. Because you can cling to an ideal, an ideology. Some people are clinging to their ideologies. Their ideals about life that are no longer even relevant. There were things you wanted to be when you was a little girl or a little boy, and you have brought this into adulthood, and that thing is no longer appropriate for realities at all. But you're clinging to this childish ideology that you formulated 35 years ago, and you're trying to bring it into being 30 years later, and it's never coming into being. And you are clinging to it. We cling to images that we have of ourselves. Our images, our ego. This, in fact, is one of the most difficult attachments to create. This attachment to our image that we have formed of ourselves, our ego, which is very often false. It cripples us, and it keeps us from making growth. So as we go through these next 5 Saturdays, then hopefully you will come out of this with a very, very different attitude and understanding about what attachment really means. Because normally we think that attachment just means attachment to material things. And that is true too. We are attached to material things. We do cling to those things that we possess materially that we feel are critical for our experience of happiness. And it can be as various as individuals. Some people are clinging to their cars because without my Mercedes, then I lose some status as a human being. And they will cling to their status. Some will cling to their clothes. So this clinging can manifest itself in many, many ways. But I want you to understand that fundamentally attachment is clinging. And out of this clinging, sometimes it becomes pathological. You're not even getting any pleasure out of it. You're clinging to people that you really don't even love. Now this is strange, isn't it? My observation has been that there are so many people in relationships and have been in relationships for years. And when you ask them, do you love the man? No. Do you love the woman? Of course not. Then for what are you together 30 years? You're not clinging to love, then you must be clinging to misery. Some people are clinging to their own miseries. It is clinging. And this clinging can become pathological when it's just clinging for the sake of clinging. Because without clinging and hanging on, possessing, you have no sense of who you are. More about that later. But I want you to begin to understand that almost 99.9% of all of the personal misery we are experiencing is rooted in our attachments to people, places, things, events, ideals, concepts of who we are, who other people are, etc. 99.9% of the dukkha, as Buddha called it, of the suffering and misery that we experience is related to our attachment. So attachment is a big thing. And when we're able to free up our energies from attachment, then that energy becomes available for transformation and growth. That psychological and emotional energy now becomes available for spiritual practice. Even economically, you will find that one of the greatest barriers toward economic success is attachment. Now, this is really strange. I know it sounds mad at first. You find many men who never realize or even move toward their full economic potential because they're too attached to their wives and children, and they cannot sacrifice the time and energy necessary to go out there and bring into being all that which they are capable of. And they can't turn that loose. Hence, they impoverish themselves as a result. It has nothing to do with them not having the intelligence and the potential, but it is that clinging. And some women cripple the man, hobble the man, because she don't want the man to go out. She's attached. And he becomes a victim of her attachment, and it cripples and it hobbles. So attachment is not only something that we do to other people, it is also what people do to us. One of the most miserable experiences you can have as a human being is to be a victim of another person's attachment. It is a horrible, horrible experience. When you find yourself a victim of another person clinging to you, their attachment to you, their manipulation of you, their reduction of you to a means toward their own personal end, it feels very bad. And you will experience it in the form of being controlled. It will feel like they're trying to control you. They will take from you your sense of freedom. The sense of freedom will be destroyed. And remember, anyone that takes from you your sense of psychological freedom, by definition, you cannot know. Because freedom is our greatest psychological and emotional need. It is the feeling of being free. And when that is compromised, when that is intercepted by another individual, when that sense of freedom is co-opted by someone else, then it makes it very difficult for you to love that person. In fact, it produces anger. And if you recall, we went through 10 weeks of a very in-depth examination of anger. What triggered your anger? So very often you will find the victim of another person's attachment always in a state of anger at that other person. They don't even know why. Because the other person has took your freedom. They've taken your freedom so that they can control you. That's what clinging is all about. To cling to a person means that you have to be able to control them. And we cling to our children, do we not? It's classic. And we cling to them out of the belief that this is the right relationship to have with our children. Clinging, overprotective, controlling. And these children, when they hit 16, 17, into that adolescence, they rebel like hell. Because you have injured them. And that is difficult. Ask only yourself, if you've had children, how painful that is when your children break your attachment, when they start breaking free of your attachment at first, because you feel like they don't love me anymore. It was never about love. They still love you, it's just you can't control them through your attachment anymore. Your clinging is broken, and you don't know what to do, because your whole life has been one of clinging and controlling and manipulating. So we're going to look at this thing, and we're going to look at it in a lot of detail and from many different angles. Are you okay so far?
Yes.
You are? Because by my own admissions, this can become a bit esoteric and a bit subtle, but it is worth the time and energy that you will put into exploring it and managing your attachments. It will change the whole quality of your being and allow you to grow. Now, for those of you who weren't here last weekend, there was some concept that was so critical. If you all that were here will bear with me, I'd like to reproduce them because it makes it very difficult to understand this subject if certain key concepts are missing. So you will bear with me, those of you who were here last time, as we revisit some of these core concepts that need to be understood. And the first one, if you remember, was something that has been called Dhamma, the law of Dhamma. It's a Sanskrit term, hard to translate. But basically, Dhamma means suchness. It means something like isness. Dhamma is reality. Independent of your opinion, independent of your desires, independent of your hopes, aspirations. Reality has nothing to do with that. Reality is absolute. It is awesome. It is. And this reality moves through a certain cycle. For instance, there's conception. All events are conceived and come into being. There's a point when something comes into being. That's true of a human being, it's true of that table, it's true of the relationship between two human beings. All that is occurring in time. There was a time when it didn't exist. And there will be a time when it won't exist. This is inevitable. So Dhamma said that whatever comes into being, obviously, will durate for a while. And in that process of durating, it will be decaying because it will be moving toward non-existence. It has come into existence, and then it moves along a timeline to non-existence. Once it has entered the stream of time, it is on its way to death. Death began at the time of birth. Please make a note of that. We have a very wrong concept of death. Death occurs, the process of dying occurs the moment of birth. Because each day thereafter you're moving a little closer and a little closer and a little closer to death. So if you're trying to prepare for death at 65, well, way on the tail end, you're going to be in bad shape. If you think death is a long way off, then you're in bad shape. That's why in the Bible, Paul says, I die daily, meaning that he meditates on this understanding. Something in you dies daily. You have to understand that. Part of what fuels our attachment is we do not understand that things are in time. They will move toward cessation. It will end. So things will durate for a while, and in that process of duration, and then they will end. This is Dhamma, and Dhamma is supreme. There is no exception. Therefore, the relationships that we are in will end. Either you will die, and remember, I am not saying the world will end. I'm saying you will end. You have to understand the big distinction between that. The world is going to go on. The world has been going on, and it will continue to go on. But you will live. That's the thing you have to understand. You will not be. And if you have not found something in life that can be the basis of your happiness, independent of these few things that you are clinging to, you're going to be in some very, very serious trouble. In fact, as you get older, you will simply experience life as becoming increasingly more and more miserable. Isn't that interesting? Because all the things that you were clinging to in the beginning start disappearing. Where's that baby doll that you were so fond of, that you played with, to the wee hour of the night? It is gone. The bicycles that we rode up and down the streets is gone. All of these things that you played with to distract yourself are gone. And this situation that you're into will pass. So we have to understand this is the law of Dhamma. There's birth, there's duration, and there's death. And there is no exception to that. And why is that so important to understand? Because that's the only kind of understanding that will make you release your grips. Remember, why do you cling in attachment? We cling. The clinging comes basically from ignorance. Please make a note of that. All of the 5 perversions that we will be talking about and have talked about, without exception, is rooted in ignorance. We talked about anger, We're talking about attachment, we'll talk about lust, we'll talk about greed, we'll talk about egotism. These have been nominated throughout time as the fundamental emotional and psychological afflictions that make the experience of the great opportunity to be human beings impossible. This is the foundation of all misery. And all of these emotional and psychological afflictions, anger, attachment, egotism, lust, greed, are rooted in one thing: ignorance. And what is it ignorance of? It is of Dhamma. It is ignorance. This clinging is ignorance of Dhamma. This clinging is your attempt to keep something from changing. It's to keep something the same forever. And this is not going to happen. You cannot keep your children the same. Now, how is this possible? You can't keep your woman the same, and you can't keep your man the same. It's not possible. In fact, what you're trying to do in these relationships, you are clinging to an image that you had of the person when they were 20 years old. First of all, what was wrong with that is that that was your image of the person. That was never what the person was in the first place. We talked about that a little bit. And if you move beyond image, all that you're going to encounter is that ego and the contents thereof, which is also false, right? So you were never at any time, not even 20 years ago, in relationship with the real person. And you've been in relationship to this image for 20 years. And the person is not that anymore, never was that. And what is the net result? About midlife. We should do sometime a workshop on midlife crisis. It is something. Really? Because all I know, I hit my midlife crisis, and it just turned me topsy-turvy. Because what happened in midlife crisis is that you exhaust your capacity to deceive yourself. Midlife crises are triggered by the loss of your capacity to deceive yourself. You can't do it no more. You done ran out of the capacity to lie to yourself. You don't, and you are shocked now, thrown into reality that you are not emotionally and psychologically prepared to deal with. And you don't know what to do. You go into a spin, and the instinct is to rush back to when I was 21 years old. Now this is trying to violate Dharma. You can't go back and be no 21 years old. Exhausted, stripped of your capacity to deceive yourself. The realization sets in, oh my God, I done wasted all my life up until now. What am I going to do? And you go into a tremendum, and you don't know it. So people do everything. They say, well, I'm going to go back and I'm going to become an NBA basketball player. Now the man is 45 years old. It's impossible. Or I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to get me a... Go ahead, try it. You can't even read that long no more. The mind, you midlife. You see? But we don't know what to do. We panic. And that happens because we have been spending all that time clinging, all that time deceiving ourselves. So attachment very often is rooted in this process of self-deception. So it's a lot of stuff that has to work out. It's a lot of things that have to be worked out. So you have to begin then to understand the law of Dharma, and that nothing remains the same forever. Heraclitus, the great Greek philosopher, sage, mystics, says very beautifully that life is like a flowing stream. You cannot step in the same place twice. The water is flowing. And you can't step in the stream at the same place twice because the stream is moving. Life is like a stream. You have to understand. Life is like a stream. It is a flow of events, circumstances, and situations that is originating from your karma. And it flows. And you cannot revisit it. You cannot postpone it. You cannot save it till later on. A lot of us are saving being happy for later on. Well, how you going to do that? You cannot save something as dynamic as life. Oh, I love this woman, but right now I'm going to take care of this, and then 20 years later I'm going to marry. The woman is gone. She's a part of the Tao. What they call the Tao. She's a part of the Tao. She's a part of the flow. There's this man. Now you love the man, but you got to look at some other things first. You know what I mean? I got to get my security in place, my attachment mix, because this thing's going to be risky, right? And first let me get braced and get all my stuff in place. Then I will make myself available to them. But this man and this opportunity is a part of the Tao. It is flowing. By the time you're ready, the man is gone, because you don't know how long even you're going to be here. Let as much how long the man will be here. So life is like that, right? And attachment is your failure to understand that life is a flow. And it has to be lived moment to moment. One of the fundamental teachings that you will find in all spiritual systems of cultivation and development is the teaching that you must learn how to be here now, how to live in the present. Every teacher has taught that. Every guru, every master, every roshi, every rebbe have taught the same thing. Attachment is a violation of this facticity of life. You have to be in the moment, because life is flowing. And one of the things that we should never do, please make a note, you should never postpone your happiness to some point in the future. Please don't do that to yourself. Every day you have to rise from your bed and get your happiness. This is not something you can say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, then 10 years later I'm going to be happy. Please, have you ever noticed all of us are planning to be happy somewhere in the future? This is madness. Now, this is nonsense. Because one, you don't even know whether you're going to be there. And certainly you don't know whether the circumstances that are available to you now to be happy will be there. They're part of it. So fundamentally you have to understand that not only are all events, people, persons, and things that you come in contact part of the Tao, you too are part of it. You too are part of it. Your body will break down. Your health will dissipate. Your eyesight will go dim. It will become hard of hearing. And as Kabir says, soon your eyes will run of water from lack of weakness, and film will fill your body. And your men, your prostrates will swell, and you ladies, you God knows you know what you're going to go through. It's too horrible to speak of. Right? Beauty will fade. All that will go. Because you too are part. Attachment is a failure to understand this. Attachment is this tremendous ignorance. So naturally, if it has caused you to try to cling to something that is endowed, you're not going to be able to hold it. And this loss of that thing will cause you so much pain. That is what the pain is. You are forcefully separated from that which you've been clinging to. And that is painful. So, let us look at this thing from all of the angles that we need to in order to begin to equip us with an ability to deal with it. Now I want to go to some of the objects, and as you all know, I bounce around a lot here, but I promise that over the next 5 weeks or so, I will make sure that I try to cover all of these things. But I want to start at the first thing. We talked last week about some of the objects of anger. Who remember what they were? Test. The objects of attachment.
Food.
What are the,
Food.
Well, that we know what category will we put food in now. Right. Physical. Right.
Physical, oh, okay. What about activity?
That's also physical. By physical, I mean anything related to your body. Right? So yeah, we're attached to food, we're attached to all kinds of things, aren't we? Right? And we talked about that a little bit. What was one of the other objects of attachment?
Attachments to others.
Attachments to others. What was another? We talked about attachment to others. We get attached to other people. You can't help it. When you're born into life, you're born into a context with other human beings. It's unavoidable. It's inescapable. And you live when a child is born. For a little while, the child is the center of attention on you. into a family, there's that mom, and then there's dad, and then comes baby. And for a little while, baby is getting all that attention for him. That feels good. Feels good. You see? And you get attached to that. You get used to being loved like that. You get used to that kind of free, unconditional flow. And you want to keep that going, don't you? Your whole life. Problem is, that's not going to happen. Soon when the brother is born into the family, or a sister, now that's when the first decay begins. Because now you're not that only child anymore, right? You have been dethroned, right? And here comes this baby brother, baby sister getting up, and now you kicked off of the lap, and you become what in the old days used to call the knee baby. Now you get to sit on the knee. You can't get in that mama's lap no more, right? And if you come from a large family like I did, where we have 11 of us, you don't even have a knee baby position on. I mean, that is covered in, right? And so from that point on, we start moving away from it. But we've gotten a taste of that. And some psychologists say that your whole effort thereafter is to return to this state, psychologically, emotionally. You're looking for this kind of relationship again, where you become the recipient of this unconditional flow of a love and attention.
What if you didn't get that love?
Oh,
what if
then
you got something totally different or the opposite of that?
Yes. Then what you become attached to is the desire to have it.
Whatever it was.
Whatever it was. If you didn't have a loving experience, now you will long for a loving experience. Oh, I wish I had. And you go on and you become attached to that whole exploit. So it doesn't matter which way you trigger, we all get had. So we get attached to other people because that starts out in the very process, right? And to some extent, this is legitimate. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that if you attach that you somehow less than a human being. No. I'm saying that is the beginning stages of what it means to be a human being. But we have to go beyond that point. You see, the reality is that almost all that you receive has come from another. All that you are after must come from another. And that's the truth. That is the truth. And the trick is that it could come from so many human beings. Attachment insists on it coming from this one human being. Right? Now, you're my wife, your job is to make me happy. Now, it's 5 other billion people on the planet now, right? That can contribute. But I've cut myself off, I put all that burden on this person. You gotta make it happen. But suppose the poor woman can't make you happy. Then you're doomed to be miserable. And you can't disconnect yourself. So it gets to be very profound here. I mean, you're going to have some moral and ethical challenges here down the road. The point I'm making is that we all are attached. We start out in a state of attachment to others. So you're right, Avia, attachment to others. And this is a big one. That's a big one. This is hard work. This is hard work. Because why are we so attached to other people? Have you ever thought about it? What is going on with that? Think about it. Why do we become so attached to other people? What is it that we get? Yes.
You're perpetuating your own ego is basically what it is. You projecting off on them things they don't really have, or things that you want them to have that you can't live without.
Mm-hmm. All right. They become very important. How would you condense that insight? Our attachment to others sometimes becomes so imprisoning, so unbreakable, because obviously we have a certain need there, a psychological need, an ego need, right?
They're part of our ego mythology.
They're part of our ego mythology, right? We need them in order to have a sense of identity, don't we? Right?
Some people need emotional support too.
Sometimes you need emotional support, okay? So this is, what would you call that, Rob? How would you condense that? A person that is emotionally weak.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that would be the right word, weak.
Bankrupt.
Bankrupt. All right. Well, we see is that our attachment to others, very often, as Emma said, is rooted in our own ego needs, our own ego mythology. Because we don't know who we are. Who we are, we don't know. They help define who we are. I'm so-and-so wife, or I'm married, I'm so-and-so husband, or I'm so-and-so brother, or I'm so-and-so sister, etc. I so-and-so employee. We tend to define ourselves in terms of our relationships to others. Right? And June pointed out, well, it's some of the other needs is that it goes to our status, right? As long as I got a wife, I got status. You know, I got a man. You see what I'm saying? I got a, you know, I'm married. I got a husband. You don't love him, you know, but that's not why you got him. You got him because of status, right? I got me one. Do you have one? You see? But it goes to the needs of the ego, and we get attached to that, and we cling to that, right? And we can't let that go, because if we let that go, then somehow we are diminished. We are diminished. Rob says emotional weakness. Yes. Sometimes two people go in a relationship, lonely, miserable, emotionally weak person A, who don't have a clue who he is, right? Who is totally impotent, cannot exist, looking miserable and looking for a way out of it, meets his female counterpart, who is also hopelessly emotionally weak, psychologically weak, miserable. And they figure by going and getting married that they will become happy. Are they going to make it? Do they have a chance? They don't have a chance. You say, no. 85% of all these relationships end up like this. 85%. Weak, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, weak. Have not done any work on themselves. Don't even know what work on themselves consists of. And it's not their fault. Please, we're not condemning anybody here. This culture, as we know, do not provide any of us with any kind of spiritual training at all, or emotional training, or psychological training. We don't give that, you see. They help prepare us to make a living, and that's, I suppose, is legitimate to some extent, but they don't show us how to be first-class human beings. That doesn't exist in the West, and that ignorance is reflected in these relationships. So attachment to others, we're going to come back to this a little later. I just want to get all these objects up here, and we will be going into detailed exploration as we go through. I just want to start getting your minds attuned to this here. Avia, do you have a third category for us?
Sure I do.
All righty. What about you, Keith? You weren't here, but what about your intuition?
We have abstract attachment.
Abstract? What do we mean by abstract attachment?
Just clinging for the sake of clinging.
Just clinging for the sake of clinging on. Sometimes you could be attached to something that is abstract, like an ideal. You could just be attached to an ideal. It's not even concrete. What are some of the ideology for your reputation? And you attach your reputation. What is this? It's not even tangible. It's not even real. It can't be, experienced at all on the level of reality. It's totally subjective, and you attach to your reputation. And look and see how much misery you have put yourself to, clinging to your attachment to your so-called reputation, which is nothing but myth. It is stuff you have created. It is made out of dreams, fantasies, nonsense. That is at the core of the conflict in these relationships. It's this clinging to your so-called reputation, your so-called image. It is madness. It don't exist. You are not that. You know, I don't take no stuff off no woman. Now look at this nonsense. Now you enter into a relationship and you clinging to your machoism. You clinging to your machoism. It doesn't matter that love is disappearing. The opportunity to love is receding. It's fading. The Tao is flowing. You understand? You are in motion. This is not available tomorrow. Nothing that is available today will be available tomorrow. Please understand this. You have got to understand this, or you'll never get out of this trap. But we clinging to our machoism that is made up of the same stuff that fantasy and dreams are made out of. Right? And we miss the opportunity. We miss the opportunity. Your ideologies. We'll talk more about this as we move a little further down. You can become attached to all kinds of things that have no corporeality to them at all, have no real existence at all, that is purely subjective, made out of the stuff that your imagination creates. Avia, what's the next one? And we'll be, again, revisiting a lot of these things.
How about others' attachment to you?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Others. When you don't know who you are, then you will have no choice but to be enslaved by another human. You don't have any other alternative at all. Others become attached to you because they find a void, an emptiness, a space. Nothing is occupying. You're absent from your own life. You're not around. You're easy to be co-opted. You don't know who you are. In fact, you go to them with the request. Tell me who I am. What should I do? Where should I go? What should I wear? You set yourself up. And naturally they become attached to you because this is good stuff. Now I got two bodies. It's like having two bodies. I mean, that's great. My body and your body. Now I want my body that is your body to go do that, right? And you're very cooperative. Because you don't know where you at, why you are, and where you're going. You have no idea. So very often others are attached to us. And if that is not the most glaring case, you will find very often that when others are attached to you, what you will find is this experience, big time. How many of our relationship is characterized by the feeling of guilt? Feeling guilty? In these relationships? You're being had. You're being victimized. Right? You're being had. And they lay this what you should, they should on you. They shouldn't all over you. They shouldn't on you. You should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that. Their whole relationship is based on instructing you on what you should do. Why? They're attached. They're co-opting you. You are being possessed. They're demonizing you. You see? And you feel it in the form of guilt. Now you feel bad. Yes.
You mean to say that when people become attached to you, you are the cause of that?
Yes.
It has nothing to do with what they're doing. It's you.
It's you. No one can ride your back if you're not good to them. If there's a you there, there's no space.
Okay.
Right? But usually it's up here. You know what I mean? It's usually both ways, isn't it? Usually it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. But you allow others to become attached to you. You really do. Because you don't have any independent existence. You have no independent being. You're empty. In the negative sense of it. See? You're just available. Anything can take over you. Today, this person, the next day, a ghost, a Hank. I mean, anything can possess you. Because you're empty inside. And it doesn't feel good psychologically when others are attached to you. And remember, attachment is not love, because y'all keep confusing this thing. Attachment and love are very different phenomena. They don't look nothing alike to anyone who has experienced the real thing. Right? Attachment is about the other person. Remember last time I gave you a scripture? Do you remember what it was? The scripture was that when we're talking about love, and we're talking about entering relationships with the ambition and goal of loving, that we should love for the sake of loving.
Right.
Not love for the sake of the person. This interaction with another human being for the sake of a person is on the level of attachment. Right? You love for the sake of not losing your capacity to love. It has nothing to do with this person. You're loving because you have to keep this thing flowing so it gets deeper. It grows deeper and deeper, that it doesn't get interrupted. But when you try to base your loving on another human being, their personality, now you drop from there, don't you? You drop down into attachment because now it's about business. Well, now I'm going to do this for you if you do this for me. And if you don't do your part, I'm not going to do my part. You see, well, here's my $50, you got your $50. Everything is business. Nothing wrong with business. I'm not against business. But please don't confuse business with love. They ain't got nothing to do with each other at all. There is no mathematics to love. Mathematics is related to attachment. Legalism is related to attachment. And when you drop from love and enter into the relationship with the personality, know that you're at the level of attachment in that very instance. Because now you can't feel positive towards that person unless that person has did their part of the deal to allow this feeling to flow. You see? And if they don't ever act according to the agreement, then you stay shut down, isolated, bottled up the whole duration of the relationship. You shut down your capacity to love, and that is a horrible thing to do to yourself. That is like suicide. It's worse than suicide of the physical body, because the shutting down of love is suicide at the level of your soul. You kill something in you that you won't get another one. You'll get another body. You're not going to get another soul. You see? So you have to begin to understand the danger of just leaving a relationship at the level of attachment. But you have to appreciate the distinction between the two. And remember I said that love is a very rare phenomenon. Very rare. Only human beings who have reached a certain degree of development can love. This baby is just starting out an attachment somewhere. You might still be at the baby stage. I don't know. You see? You may still be whining for things. If you're going into relationships looking for what you're going to get, you know, that's attachment. It's attachment. You see? And when others are attached to you, in order to control you, they're going to make you feel guilty. That's the only way to control you. The more guilt I can put in you, the easier I can manipulate you. You know, you really don't care nothing about me, because if you did, you would buy me a mink coat, or you'd help me get a car. Or Pam called stuff, you give me some stuff. Right? You know, fellas, you gotta get these women they stuff, cause, you know, you don't give them no stuff, then you must don't care about them, right? So this has to do with stuff, right? And you start feeling guilty. Ooh, you know, I should, but nothing you want to. But, oh, I guess I should take her out to this club and it's a, but this music hurting your head. You don't even like dancing. The smoke in the room, the alcohol, you don't want to be out here, but I guess I better go because, you see, you feel coerced. That ain't love. How is that love? You feeling coerced, you dragging your feet. Love don't move like that. Love does not hesitate like that. When you're in love, and this is one I die for. What is this club? That ain't nothing. If you love somebody and you can die for them, what kind of resistance do you have to going to a club? Be clear about this. It's attachment. Confucius says that the beginning of all confusion starts by naming something by the wrong name. It's attachment. It's all right. I'm not condemning it. It's okay. We just have to become aware of it and grow it, that's all. You can't move into your higher capacity for love without first recognizing your attachment and working through it. And yes, it will be difficult. I didn't say it won't be difficult. And this is something that you must be willing to commit your whole life to. This is not something that you're going to say, well, Bhagwan, I'm going to try this for 6 months and give it a... No. I can tell you now, you're not going to get anything. You have to commit your whole life to this thing. You cannot be had so cheaply. This is not a cheap trip here. It's not instant. So you have to work at that. More about that later. Avia, what's another category?
Attachment to absent others.
Okay. Attachment to the absent other. Clinging to the absent other. Can't move on. Remember I said you stuck, many of us stuck, can't move on. We can't move in no other relationship because we still attached somewhere back with a relationship 20 years ago somewhere. Now this is madness. That relationship was there. It was available 10 years ago. Yes, it was thriving, full of life. Something could have happened. Great love could have happened, but it's gone. It is flowed. It's over with. Done. Will never be duplicated again. Gone. And we cannot take advantage of the present moment to be in love because we are attached to the absent other. You're still looking for that other kind of woman. You fell in love with Susie or Bob when you were 16 years old somewhere. And you've been in search of them ever since. And there are no more. Everybody in this room, everybody on this planet is absolutely unique. Absolutely unique. The question of comparison does not even arise. How are you going to compare? Unique. Won't be duplicated again. You ain't going to never find her again. You ain't going to never find him again. That's gone. Over. Done. Let it go. Don't be attached to this thing no more. Because it is that attachment and that clinging to it that will shut you down, that will keep you unavailable to what is present in your life.
Widowers and widows.
They have to go over that. That's the hardest part of those who have entered into the grieving process when they've been married a long time and their husband died or their wife died, and it is hard to come back. Some can't come back. Some of them died very shortly thereafter. They fail to thrive, just like that baby when they cut off from the flow of attention and love and etc. Fed, clothed, diaper changed, still will fail to thrive, will die in many instances, or will become retarded. So important is that continuous flow. Well, when that widower or widow is separated, right, then there has been no preparation, you see, that on their side. The faculty in order to even come out of and deal successfully with that situation has been atrophied from lack of use of all those years. They can't even use it. It ceased to exist. They're trapped. And it's a very painful thing. It is very painful. So you're right. Attachment to the absent other. And remember, attachment can be negative and positive. Don't misunderstand me here. All right? I don't want you to misunderstand me. Right? But it's attachment nevertheless. And very often, the negative attachment, somebody did something to you to hurt you, right? And now you still attached to that experience. You're still attached to an experience that hurt you 20 years ago, depriving you of an opportunity to be happy now. You are certifiably insane. You really are. You really are. I mean, you need some real serious work done on you. Because you're clinging to a miserable experience and then you letting it color every experience that is coming through you. You are insane. Why are you doing that to yourself? Now this is madness. Now this is madness. And yet this is one of the things that we do all the time, all of us. Notice attachment is almost always with something in the past. Please make a note of it at any level. Attachment always got something to do with the past. Now the past is the past. It's over. It's gone. It's not going to repeat itself no more. It is that part of the stream that Heraclitus said you can't step in no more. It has flowed. It is a part of the Tao. Can't do it. You cannot eat yesterday's food. Gone. You can eat some food today. So we have to really begin to understand very often there's been these negative experiences that we've had with an absent other, and we become so attached to the knowledge that we derive from that experience. It's deep that we can't let it go. And in some sense you have to understand this and be compassionate. Things that were true because you had a negative experience with or Bob or Susie. It was right, it was negative. No question about it. Yes, you did get hurt. This is no question about it. And it was true. But it was true 20 years ago. It's not true now. Because the river has moved. Reality has moved. And one of the hardest things for us to do is to let go of things that were true legitimately 20 years ago. Because reality is new every time, every day. It's a whole new thing, right? And our clinging to these interpretations and conclusions that we have derived from these experiences very often is the biggest barrier to our living in the present and the now, being happy. It really is. And a lot of that has to do with the absent. We looked at anger. Remember when we were looking at anger, we saw how much anger we had at the absent other? You angry at people that did stuff to you 20 years ago. That person ain't even around no more. You still angry. Dragging that stuff around, right? Destroying your present capacity to be happy because you mad about, angry about what so-and-so did to you. He sure did me wrong 25 years ago. Okay, he did you wrong. That was 25 years ago. This is 25 years later. This is a new day, new sun, new water. You're not even the same. Your whole body has changed. There's no cell in you that was there 25 years ago. So you're not even the same person. At a physical level, the whole entirety of physical reality has shifted. But you're still clinging, carrying in your mind that experience. And it is shutting you down. Attachment is like that too, isn't it? So we have to look at all of that. Avia, is there any others?
Attachment to our own self. But
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Attachment to our ego. Super big. I might spend 2 workshops, 2 days on this one here. Because this is the starting point, folks. This is where we have to start. I'm just trying to time my break. Attachment to our ego. So this, we'll make the last first, okay? And let's go into this. And then we'll come back to all the others. And I'm going to take this one first, even though it is on our list last, simply because it is the starting point of all of this. Attachment to our egos. What does ego consist of? Give me the anatomy of ego.
Stuck on the
All right, well, we know that it contains some arrogance, right? What else will we find? If we dissected ego, opened it up, looked into it, what are we going to find in ego?
Know everything.
Huh?
Never wrong.
Okay, that's arrogance again. What else?
Mythology is not
Well, we
based
know
on
it's all
that.
going to be mythological. We're going to find an image that you have of yourself, right?
What we want others to think we are.
Right, you're going to find some politics, right? What else are we going to find in that ego?
It's not consistent. It's ever changing. Your image of yourself might be different today than it was last
All right,
week.
I like that. That it's unstable. Right? They're fundamentally unstable. Because you're a different Keith when you're here. Right? As soon as you go home, there's a different Keith that emerges. And then when you leave there and go to your mother's house, well, Keith's mother's passed on, but he knows what I mean. When you, with people you grow up with, then a different Keith emerges. When you pass a casual stranger on the street, actually you are a crowd. You're not even congealed into a one person. You are multi-psychic. You are just responding, reacting, chameleon-like to any circumstance, any situation. You don't know, really there is no real you. There is no real I. That remains the same throughout different circumstances, situations with different people. Have you ever noticed that?
But being multidimensional does not mean it's a negative thing.
No, I didn't say it's negative. I'm simply meaning that it's unstable. Which one is real? Which one is real? Which one is real? In fact, that was part of the whole spiritual methodology of Ramana Maharishi, a great Hindu mystic saint out of India at the beginning of this century. The whole inquiry, pure meditation, was who am I? That was the mantra. And the question was put to, which one is real? Which one is really, which one is real? Yes, Sam.
Wouldn't that be just conforming into society?
Yes.
You know, whatever is set up in society, and you just fill in these little parts.
Yes. You play parts. You play a role. You are conforming. You are reflecting. You are adapting. You are adjusting. But what is the is there a real I behind all of that? What is the nature of the I that is doing all this adjusting? Because you think each one is real. When you there casually interrelating with your friend, you know, girl, I'm this, I'm that, you really think that that's what you are. But it's not. You see? You go and you say, oh, you know, I'm kind, I'm loving, and I'm sweet, and I get along with everybody. But then when you go in your relationship with your husband, you are fighting, you are lying, you are cheating. What is that? The thing is that these eyes are not only different, they are contradictory, aren't they? How do we explain it? So you're very right. There is a kind of multiplicity going on here, right? In fact, the mystics always talk about the necessity of becoming one. This being one is very important. That seems to be the first stage, to really become one out of the many, right? The many becomes one. More about that later. But again, looking at the anatomy, because we get attached to our ego, the contents of our ego, and our ego consists of many things. I'm looking, however, for a more, even a deeper treatment of this thing, ego. What is this ego? We all say we got ego, right? And it's made up of these things.
Well, it's sort of like what you talked about in the anger workshop, your attitudes, which are preconceived notions and preconceived reactions to things that are occurring or may not even have occurred or that occurred in the past.
Of course.
Conditioning.
Oh,
Yeah,
now
there
we're
you
getting
go.
it. There my therapists are, huh? They're my, all right. Attitudes. What we call some scholars, what the Hindus call karma bijas. You will pardon me and forgive me for these Sanskrit terms because I don't really know any other ones. There's nothing in the English language that deals so precisely with the mechanics of the mind. But the karma bija simply means the seeds of your actions. Karma means action. Karma means to act. And so we all have these karma bijas, right, buried in us somewhere, in this ego. The seeds that are manifest as attitudes, aren't they? Your attitude is a predisposition to behave a certain way, period. Long before the event got there. Sandra was mentioning that very often we are adapting to events, circumstances, and situations. Would that is the case? What is happening more often than not, that we're really reacting to situations and circumstances based on our attitudes that were already preconceived. And very often has no connection with the situation or circumstances, unrelated at all. Right? So it's a very, very interesting thing to really look at. It's a very, very interesting thing to look at. Conditioning. Is this a big one, June? Conditioning is big, isn't it? Because we all have had parents. And our parents, we love them, but our parents weren't perfect. And we're not perfect. Doesn't mean we don't love them. So we all have some conditioning in it. Right? And this conditioning has created in us a certain mental pattern, hasn't it? That has become habituated in us. What in the East we call a vasana. Okay? So we can call it karma vasana. An actual pattern. It has become habituated. We have reacted like that so often that now it's become automatic. By automatic, I mean your conscious and deliberate decision making is not required. Conditioning takes over. It almost feels like it's an instinct at this point, right? But that's conditioning. It's conditioning. And we all have about 25,000 hours of it, basically. And it all is stored in your conscience. Your conscience, not your consciousness. Your conscience. The thing that you look to for your moral and ethical guidance. Whenever you're trying to make a moral and ethical decision, what do you go back to? Your conscience. Right? That's all. And in that conscience is all the rules, rights, and wrongs that have been taught to you. In jurisprudence, you go back to the statutes, right? Statutes is just the conscience of a society that has been mutually agreed upon. That's all. And a lot of the stuff that is in this thing is wrong, inappropriate. It's your condition. Nothing wrong with it, but you should be clear about it. And as long as one can only react out of one conditioning, one does not have the capacity to be responsible. Now I know you're going to say, Bhagwan, you really done went crazy here. I'm telling you that if you are limited to being able to respond only as according to your conditioning, you cannot by definition be responsible. Responsible is made up of the two words, the ability to respond outside of your conditioning. The ability to respond to reality outside of your condition. Now you've been conditioned somewhere back in your past that if a woman don't get up and go get you a glass of water, right, or fix you a plate, that she don't love you. Now that's your conditioning. You can't help it. You got to get out of that stuff. It ain't real. You see? Your whole ideology govern things is rooted primarily in your conditioning. So our conditioning has to be re-examined, revisited, and edited. There's some good stuff in there, don't misunderstand me. But there's some garbage in there too. You know, just become first aware. And in this very process of becoming aware, it will automatically edit out the garbage. The more aware you become, the more the garbage will fall off automatically. So it's really about awareness. But one of the big things that we find about the ego is that the ego, it cannot and does not like to be wrong. It's a deep feeling in all of us that we are right. It really is. It really, really is. That we are right. And that we cannot be wrong. And this is very hard. This is very hard to do, to adjust. Usually we can't do it ourselves. It has to be pointed out from the outside. Someone has to actually tell you, Pam, you are wrong. If that is not there, you'll never know. There is nothing inherent in the ego structure that gives it the capacity to become aware of its own wrongs, shortcomings. It all has to be pointed out from the outside. Hence the role of a teacher, a friend, a guru, a rabbi, a rosh, a master. They have no other function. Because on our own, we can't see it. It's a blind spot. We have in ourselves what Gurdjieff, the German mystic, called a Kundabuffer. This Kundabuffer in this ego structure just blocks us, blinds us. We can't see it. And so deep down inside, we really have a hard time having an authentic experience, and we just really can't feel it. And that sometimes is the hardest part to get through. So unless somebody comes out and point out to us that you're wrong. And then, of course, we have to have the ability to accept the criticism, right? Which means that we got to work on the arrogance, don't we? You see? But we'll never even be able to work on our arrogance unless somebody causes us to have to start working on our arrogance. And again, that's the outside triggering event. And the problem is that we get attached to this whole thing. Now, before we go to break, so that we be situated afterwards when we come back, because I want to keep rolling on this stuff. I know 5 workshops is not enough time. I'm going to tell you that now, honestly, because I can easily draw out about 21,000 different manifestations of emotional afflictions that result from your failure to manage attachment. Just and there's no way we're going to be able to point out all of these things. But what I want you to begin to see is that when we're going to start talking about this attachment to our ego, to our image, and I want to use a false image of self to let that become sort of like an overall definition of what we mean by ego. A false image that you have of yourself. It is false. And we become attached to it. What happens when you become attached to a false image of yourself and now you're moving along this timeline we talked about earlier? You entering into the Tao, the life, the flow of things, attached to this false. That means that unless you can change, adapt this image of yourself to make it fit in with reality, you're going to be in some trouble right now. You're going to be in some serious trouble. So after the break, we're going to go deep into our attachment to our ego, this false image of ourselves, and the role that plays in our experience of misery, suffering, pain, disappointment, all kinds of things, and try to get some insights into that. Okay, so let's take our break. We'll come back at 2. Those of you who still need to register, Emma's here today.